Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Let me introduce some members of town government that assist this board. To my left is Martin Simon, Assistant Town Attorney. To his left is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the Planning Department. You are all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you are requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide this board with precise and accurate information so we can make a decision based on the facts presented. This board must consider the 5 area variance considerations in order to render a decision, and they're posted up there for you. And they are as follows. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Number 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When you are called, please present your certificates of postings or mailings to Mr. Donadio. Then you will be asked to go to the podium and will state your name and address for the record and proceed to tell us why you need your variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can get back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning their case. There are 2 ways to find out about your case. You can call the planning office tomorrow after 12 p.m., or you can wait and be notified by mail.
One moment, Mr. Chairman. Hashtag.
Do you want me to paste those?
Try it again. Thank you. But it's not. Oh, here we go. Oh, my God. Okay. Here we go. Okay. All righty. The first case on the agenda, case number 19008, 153 Southern Boulevard, LLC, 290 Lake Avenue, Nesconset. The location of the property, the west side of Lake Avenue South and 181 feet south of Oak Run. The property is zoned R15. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 45 feet to 42 feet for an existing 52-square-foot front portico, to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 16 feet to 12 feet, and the total side yards from 34 feet to 32 feet for 2 existing 96-square-foot sheds. Increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to 29% for an existing asphalt driveway.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. I guess if you look at the survey submitted, you'll see that this is an extremely long plot. It fronts on Lake Avenue, and the first variance that we're asking for is for that portico, which is approximately 52 square feet. But the actual house, which was built in 1953, has a setback of 49 feet. So the only projection into the required setback of 45 feet is this portico, and that's why we're asking for the 42-foot setback. The rest of the house is actually back, as I said, 49 feet from the street. With respect to the sheds, from 16 feet to 12 feet, this is all in the building envelope. So therefore, if the sheds were all the way in the back, then we'd be looking at accessory structures and different setbacks, much less. But since this is a very long parcel, we're asking the board for the variance from 16 to 12 feet. And of course, when we do that, we end up with total side yards of less than the required 34 feet to 32 feet. And finally, the paving, which again you can see in the picture, it exceeds the requirement from which is 25 feet to we're asking for 29% as opposed to 25%. I said feet before I meant percent. So we don't think that this is an undesirable change in the character of the area. It certainly isn't a detriment. This is on Lake Avenue. You can see the house is a rather nice looking house, and it's set back far enough not to have any effect on the neighborhood. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method, well, I guess we could knock down the sheds, but it really doesn't make any sense in this type of a situation. The sheds existed, we can't tell for how long. There is on the property card one shed shown, but I'm not sure it's the same shed. It says 10 by 10, and it was CO'd in 1992, but it may not be the same shed, and it probably isn't. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, certainly not substantial in this particular case. Whether it has any environmental impact, it has none. These are merely setback variances. And finally, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. I guess in the 50s and the 60s, they built the house. We don't know when the sheds were built, but somebody did build them and didn't get variances or permits. So we ask the board for its favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
Planning.
No, thank you.
Sabrina?
Mr. Chairman, the survey submitted does indicate that the existing 4-foot chain link fence with a gate encroaches up to 2.8 feet into the right-of-way to the east. This department recommends the removal or legalization of these encroachments.
I don't know why that wasn't picked up by the building department, so now we got the environmental department policing the fences.
You want to show the survey? Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see it?
What do you think, Blaze? I don't know why.
Right in the front.
No, it's in the front.
Look right in the front.
It's in the right-of-way.
It is in the right-of-way, what, about 2 feet?
2.8, yes.
2.8, yeah. Yeah, it is there.
We'll move it. We'll move it back to the line.
Okay. That'll be a condition.
Okay.
All right? Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're teasing. You did.
The next case on the agenda, case number 19009, Joseph Kachuba, 4 Dean Court, Comac. The location of the property, the south side of Dean Court, 108 feet west of Ruth Boulevard. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 12 feet to 0 and total side yards from 28 feet to 12 feet for an existing 102-square-foot shed, to decrease the minimum setback of a 2-foot retaining wall from the property line from 3 feet to 0 for existing retaining walls A, B, and C. Increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to 29%, in the side yard from 25% to 33%, and in the rear yard from 25% to 37% for existing pavers and paving.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joe Kachuba. I'm of 4 Dean Court in Comac, and I'd like my expediter to speak for me tonight.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Could
Mr.
you-
Chairman, members of the board. Roxanne Trella, Dynamic Expediting Services with offices at 1040 Terry Road, Ronkonkoma, New York.
Could you spell your last name so we get it correct on the record, please?
Sure, it's T as in Tom, R-E-L-A.
Thank you.
No problem.
Can I just ask a question? Do you have the affidavits? And yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right? Okay.
Good, okay. So we're here today seeking variances for Mr. Kachuba's property. The property is zoned R10 and improved with a one-family dwelling. The property owner had a in-ground pool installed last year under a building permit issued by the town of Smithtown. However, when he was closing out his pool permit, a couple of issues came up. More specifically, we have 3 separate variances with regards to paved surfaces. The first being the front yard being increased from 25 to 29%. This increase comes from an existing driveway. The driveway is comparable in size to all of the driveways in the neighborhood. The width of the driveway is about 19 feet. However, his property from the town right-of-way is more narrow and increases in size towards the rear. Because of the deficient lot width in the front of the property, it slightly reduces his front yard. The second is to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the side yard from 25 to 33%. This is a small walkway leading from the front of the dwelling to the rear yard. The side yard setback on that side is 11.9 feet, and the width of the paver patio leading to the rear yard is about 5 feet in width. Lastly, is the request to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the rear yard from 25 to 37%. Again, the shape of the property comes into play here. It's more narrow in the front yard, increasing to the rear yard, and because of the property shape, the size permitted for the paved surface decreases. We're also here for the existing shed. The shed is small, approximately 12 by 8. It maintains 1.9 feet on one side of the shed and 0.5 feet on the other side, where it's supposed to maintain 6 feet. The shed is about 16 feet behind the front line of the dwelling, however, it is still in the required side yard. Lastly, we are here for the retaining wall, decreasing the minimum setback from 2 to 3 feet to 0 feet. Again, while Mr. Kachuba had the pool installed, all of the dirt that was excavated from the pool area was used to grade the property, and then the retaining walls were installed, making the property all completely level. However, in this area in Comac, some of the properties are higher up than the others, so the retaining wall was used to satisfy that. And I do have additional photos that were taken this evening if you'd like to see more. We also did a survey of the surrounding neighborhoods, and we were able to find some prior approvals from the board with similar requests being granted in R10 zoning in Comac. And I do have those decisions with me if you'd like to hear them.
I just have a question.
Sure.
What's in front of the fence there?
That was an old swing set, and when they lifted it with the crane, it got destroyed, it's wonky, it's gone.
Okay.
It's completely gone.
I was just trying to figure out what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning.
No, thank you.
Sabrina.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the survey submitted indicates that a portion of existing retaining wall C encroaches up to 1.7 feet onto the neighboring residential parcel to the south, and that portions of the existing 6-foot PVC fences in the same area encroach up to 3.3 feet onto two neighboring residential parcels to the south. This department recommends the removal or legalization of these encroachments. The area on the
where that is?
bottom there highlighted.
Right here.
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be a condition if approved.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? You have a motion to close the application, please.
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
The next case on the agenda, case number 19010. Gold Coast HDM Realty LLC, Michael Q., 275 Osser Avenue, Hauppauge, the location of the property. The south side of Osser Avenue, 504 feet west of Adams Avenue. The property is zoned LI. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 20 feet to 3 feet for a proposed 35-square-foot first-floor addition. To reduce the minimum front yard landscaped area from 80% to 74% of the lot, it is currently existing at 77%. To reduce the minimum parking from 76 spaces to 55 for a proposed 35-square-foot addition, 15,116 square feet of interior alterations, and 81 square feet of facade renovations.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman, board members. Dan Peveraro with Key Civil Engineering, Peveraro, 664 Blue Point Road, Holtzville.
Okay, thank you. All the paperwork is submitted? You have, okay, good. Thank you.
Our application is for an interior alteration and facade renovation to the existing building at 275 Oser Avenue. The building is to be modified to square off the front corners of the building. They're currently rounded, so just very small building additions in each corner to square that off from the existing condition. The site will be modified to construct previously approved land bank parking in the rear of the site, and to widen the front sidewalk from 3.5 feet wide existing to 6 feet proposed, which will allow for better access into the building. We're asking for 3 variances tonight. The first is to reduce the minimum side yard from 20 feet to 3 feet. The second is to reduce the minimum front yard landscaped area from 80% to 74%. And the third is to reduce minimum parking from 76 to 55 stalls. The first variance to reduce the side yard, the existing side yard setback currently is 4.8 feet. We're putting a new facade on the front of the building that will return to the side of the building. It's approximately 1 foot wide, so most of the side yard is to remain at 4.8 feet. There's a small portion of the building that will be reduced to approximately 3 feet side yard due to the new building facade that's being added. The second variance being requested for a reduction in landscape area is due to widening the front proposed sidewalk area. That is reducing the existing front yard landscaping from 76.9% to the requested 74%. It's a pretty de minimis change, just a few extra feet of width on that sidewalk. When you walk it now, it feels very tight when you're going up to the front of the buildings or just giving a little bit of extra room for pedestrian access. The third variance is a reduction in parking from 76 to 55 stalls. The ITE parking generation manual indicates that approximately 24 parking stalls would be required for this use, where 55 are being requested to be built. Those additional stalls in the back were previously approved as a land bank parking area under a separate application that was previously made to the town and approved. So there's really very small changes to the building area in total, and we're just building out some of the land bank parking that was previously approved. Because the changes to the existing building are all very small, and the changes to the site are to allow for increased parking and better pedestrian access, we don't believe that any of the variances will cause an impact to the neighborhood, are substantial, can be achieved by an alternative, will cause an adverse effect on the environment, or were created by the applicant. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I just have a quick question. We were there this morning to look at the property. Along the east side, between you and your neighbor, there's a retaining wall. There's a drop of about 8 feet. Now, they had some kind of a metal fencing on top of that. It's gone in most spots. And do you have plans to fix that before you start parking cars over there?
Yes, so we'll be adding a 42-inch fall protection on top of that wall as is required by code. In speaking with the planning department, as it's required by code, it won't require any variances.
Okay, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard of this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think everything should be in here. Okay, Steve.
The next case on the agenda, case number 19007, HPG Properties LLC, 284 Indian Head Road, Kings Park. The location of the property is the northwest corner of Indian Head Road and Old Northport Road. The property is zoned LI. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum parking setback from the front property line from 50 feet to 30 feet on Old Northport Road, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 17 feet for sign numbers 1 and 2, to increase the number of wall signs from a maximum of 1 to 2, to increase the number of ground signs from a maximum of 1 to 9 for sign numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 11.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Anthony Guardino. I'm a partner with the law firm of Farrell Fritz and Hopog. I represent HPG Properties, which is the owner of the property located at 284 Indian Head Road in Kings Park. And as Mr. Donadio mentioned, my client is seeking front yard setback and sign variance relief associated with a proposed Starbucks restaurant. I'm joined by Dominic Cardullo from Bowler Engineering, who is available to help explain the Starbucks operation and the details of the site plan if the board wants to hear that. And my client, Archie George Gatos, is in the back. He's a principal, George Gatos, Georgatos. Sorry about that. And he's in the back there. He is a principal with HPG Properties. So the board is very familiar with the site. I'm sure I was here just a couple of months ago making an application for the learning experience for the signs that were associated with it. It's a little more than 2.5 acres in size, located at the corner of Indian Head Road and Old Northport Road. It is located in the LI Industrial District. It is currently developed right now with the one-story, the Learning Experience Child Care Facility. That's about 10,000 square feet in size. And that received approval from this board several years ago. And then, of course, the sign variances that I mentioned just, I think it was back in May. I think, as a 60-year resident of the town, I've passed the site literally thousands of times. I think that this was a huge improvement for this corner, which is actually the southern gateway to Kings Park. And I think that Starbucks will have a similar positive impact on the town. And I'm excited that it'll be my Starbucks. It's on the way to work each day. The property is characterized, the surrounding property is characterized by a variety of industrial and commercial uses. In the booklet there's some photographs of the surrounding uses. I don't need to go through them, you're familiar with them. The Starbucks that's being proposed is 2,227 square feet. It will have indoor and outdoor seating, and there will be a double drive-through, and the store will be located, or the restaurant will be located on the pad that is located south and east of the Learning Experience. The Starbucks originally had been proposed with a single drive-through, but the planning department had urged them to consider a second drive-through, which is now part of the plan that is up on the screen. However, there will only be one pickup window, so the two drive-throughs actually converge to pick up the coffee or whatever it is that's being ordered. There are two wall signs proposed, one on each frontage. So this is not an over-intensification of wall signs. It's just a medallion or on one side on the south facing Old Northport Road, and then the Starbucks lettering is facing Indian Head Road. There will be 8 ground signs that are associated with the operation of the 2 drive-through lanes. With respect to the first variance, which is the front yard setback, that will allow the driveway that exits the drive-through to be located 30 feet from Old Northport Road, where 50 feet is required. If you can go back to the site plan, I would like to just show the board. That's fine, actually. It's a little misleading. We do need a variance, but it's because we're 30 feet from that diagonal line, which is the right-of-way. And you see that in the bottom left corner there? There's a diagonal line that is the right-of-way of Indian Head Road, kind of an odd shape. And the 30 feet is measured to that, but if you measure to the actual pavement, we're like 60 feet. So we're going to look like we comply, but we don't. So that's just a point I would like to make. The 2 wall signs, again, as I mentioned, one on each wall facing the roadway. They require relief because you're only allowed 1 wall sign per building, regardless of how many frontages you have, which is, I've been doing this a long time, it's pretty unusual. Usually you're allowed to have 1 sign facing each road that you face. Here you can only have 1 sign total, so we do need the second sign, the variance for a second sign. And then the height of the signs, the maximum height is 17 feet. You're only allowed 15 feet, as the board knows, so that's a relatively de minimis request. The signs themselves actually meet the sign area requirements, so they comply. They're just slightly too high up on the wall. And then the last variances relate to ground signs, and they all relate to the drive-throughs. There are 8 signs, so it sounds like we need a lot of relief, and I guess we do, because we're asking for 8 signs. But those 8 signs are all part and parcel of the operation of a drive-through lane. So you need, I guess it's called a pre-menu board, a menu board, an order board, and then you have to have a bar at the top so a vehicle that goes through is not too tall and rips out the canopy. If we had originally been able to proceed with the single drive-through, we'd only need 4 signs. The reason we need double the signs now, because we were urged to have double the drive-throughs. So each drive-through now requires its own sign, ground sign package. So at this point, I think I'm going to stop. I don't know if the board wants to hear for Dominic Curgiulo. He can explain the site plan. I don't know if the board wants to hear that. I know you're familiar with it, but
Yeah.
would you like him to
I just have a
speak?
question.
Sure, of course.
How many cars can you fit in that queue?
There you go.
Excuse me, you have to introduce yourself, please.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Dominic Chardulo. I represent Bowler Engineering New York, PLLC. located at 275 Broad Hollow Road in Melville, New York. And I'm a licensed professional engineer in New York State. To answer your question, there are 16 cars that could fit in the double drive-through queue between both lanes.
So if you only had the single lane, it would only be 8 cars?
It's not an exact split, just because there's an additional, I believe, 3 cars after the split, so it's about 11 or so with a single lane.
You know, Starbucks is a unique animal. How do you figure out the time factor between cars, you know, between ordering? Because I guess, I've never been there, but I guess it gets kind of complicated with some of these things.
Yeah, we don't have anybody here to represent Starbucks, but I know it's roughly, they almost have it down to a science. I know it's roughly like 2 minutes between ordering and picking up. It's a very quick process for them that I know they've got down to a science.
If I can also just comment, I know that with the other Starbucks that where I've represented them, other applications, because of the mobile app, people can order and pay. It's mind-boggling that somebody would wait on the drive-through, but they can go and wait on the drive-through and just literally drive through. So that car is processed quickly because they don't have to pay, and they're just literally handed the coffee because it's already been made, because they ordered it ahead of time. If somebody pulls up to the board and then orders, 4 cups of coffee, then that's of course gonna take a little bit longer.
Now, I've just seen some Starbucks that they don't have the luxury of the 16 cars queuing, and the queue goes out into the road,
Some don't,
and
you're right.
traffic is blocked. Okay. But this seems to work a lot better.
Yeah.
And this is all internal, so in
Yeah.
the unlikely event that there would be more than 16 cars, it's only coming back into this parking lot. It's not going out to Indian Head Road, the queue, and it's not going out even to Old Northport Road.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No. Planning?
The board's probably wondering why there's no memorandum from the planning department on this, because typically, when we see a Starbucks application, there are quite a number of signs being requested. So this application is very similar to one that goes back a few months ago, 2161 Jericho Turnpike, if the board remembers. It was a proposed Starbucks right across the street from the Mayfair Shopping Center. The building, the signage is almost identical to it. That was also a double drive-through. And the board approved the signs that the planning department had recommended. We got rid of all of the smaller, detail signs on the site, and we stuck with exactly what's being proposed here. So we have no objection to the application.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Nothing? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Good night now. Spelling of your last name? Yeah. And that concludes our meeting for tonight.